So zero trust is not a lot of things. You hear a lot of people in the industry talk to zero trust as like it's a thing or it's a product you can sell. That's not the case. It's a strategy within a business. It needs to be looked at more broadly. It needs to be accepted by the board level, and it needs to have documentation around it. And you would more consider it a journey, and that is a continuous journey rather than a destination having implemented a product. However, as you'll see in what we do here, Palo Alto is able to support that journey through certain technologies. We obviously spend quite a lot of time talking to our customer base about zero trust. And here are some of the key things that we hear. And starting on the left-hand side of this slide, these are things that you might hear from your IT practitioners, guys working on the ground who've got projects to do and looking for things to deliver. Obviously, you know, for example, replacing a legacy VPN, they might have Cisco AnyConnect, for example, and that is just providing access to data center applications. That will have a business outcome with replacing that. It's providing a more consistent application accessing experience, providing additional security, rather than just connectivity, putting inline security in that, thus reducing risk to the business. And what is required to do that? That would be zero trust network access, or ZTNA, which is a term you'll hear quite a lot in this presentation. And that will be delivered via one of our solutions. So things to listen out for when you're speaking to customers is generally at a higher level, you know, your organization wants to have a zero trust strategy. Whilst we can assist, you can assist, you can have, I'm sure some of your organizations have got practitioners who are able to support the building out of that strategy. It's not something you can sell specifically to. It is something that is owned by the business you're supporting, and you can help advise and talk to that strategy. Vendor consolidation is a key thing, and we'll go into why that's a key thing at the moment. But historically, businesses have bought point products each time they have a problem. So a need arises, they buy a point product, they have to try and integrate it, or inevitably they don't get it integrated in the existing security stack. It merely builds out another thing that requires management. It's another thing that requires individuals to manage it. And that is proving quite complicated these days for businesses to manage. Continuous security policy is a key tenet of zero trust, and being able to provide that same policy so that the user has access to the application regardless of where they are is one of the most important parts of the zero trust journey. Obviously, consolidation can improve cost or reduce cost to the business, and that's not just the cost of managing and maintaining lots of different solutions. It's a cost of risk as well, and risk is an important priority at board level. So what is zero trust? Well, I can tell you what it's not. Zero trust is not just about identity. A lot of noise in the industry is around zero trust being fixed with MFA, or once you've authenticated, you've provided a zero trust environment. Just because you know who someone is and provide connectivity based on that knowledge of who they are is not zero trust. And it's not just about microsegmentation. Yes, you need to carve things up and keep things separate, but you also need to provide additional security between those segments. And ZTNA, which is one of the key elements that we'll come on to, is not just is zero trust. It isn't part of zero trust. It is an access element. Zero trust is not something you can buy. You can buy the components of it, but you have to manage them. You have to put policies in, etc. So a simple view of zero trust is that it is the elimination of implicit trust. And when I say implicit trust, it's granting user access based on authentication, for example. And once they've got that access, that then becomes implicit trust. They're allowed to carry on regardless. It doesn't matter of any state changes. It doesn't of both the user and the application. And it's kind of an allow and ignore, for example. So you allow access to a network segment or an application, and once that connectivity is provided, you ignore the subsequent traffic flows. That would be contrary to what is genuine zero trust. So you need to provide continuous validation of every digital interaction. That's every single connectivity to every segment of every application and every area of applications that the users are connecting to. So conceptually, this is quite simple. All you're really looking to do is provide a user access to an application. All applications and all users need to go through the zero trust policy that is generally built up of the user, their identity, who they are, where they are, MFA connectivity, making sure that they are who they say they are, for example. And the application, is this the right application that the user is allowed to get to? Is this the right device that the user is using? Is this device allowed to get access to the application? The device piece can become a bit more complicated because there are users who may not be utilizing company-owned devices. So you need to manage unmanaged devices, which is a bit of a tautology, but you need to provide access for those unmanaged devices and those users utilizing them. And then the data. Is the application secure? Is the data within it allowed to go to that user? Is the data secure? Does the data have anything nasty within it? And then obviously security inspection of all of those elements and all of the transactions between them. However, the complexity arises when you realize all the different locations that those users might be. So me, for example, working for Palo Alto, I'm currently at home, but I could be on the train, I could be in a branch office, I could be in our HQ in sunny California. But I need access to all the applications, regardless of where they are, be that a Salesforce as a SaaS app, something stored in Google for public cloud, something more secure in our data center, or just general access to the internet. And it doesn't matter where I am or what device I'm using, I need to be able to get to the application to do my job. That is how we start building out the benefits of zero trust. And while zero trust itself might seem like a lot of hard work, one of the things that it does provide is businesses need to see it as an enabler. It is an enabler for users to get access to what it is that they need to do their job all of the time. And I think when it's framed like that, and you look at it as a cost benefit or a de-risking benefit to an outcome that is for a business that is also an enabler to have more active and engaged staff who are more productive because they're getting access to exactly what they need wherever, then zero trust can seem like a good journey to take a business on. However, currently with distributed security stacks, that can be very difficult to manage. If you think, for example, you might have a user at home who's trying to get to the data center, they might have two applets on their end device to get to different environments. They might have one that takes them to SaaS applications and the internet. They might have a different one that takes them to the data center. How do you provide a continuous policy or a contiguous policy for that user if you've got to write policy and deliver policy in multiple different places? It could be a different firewall on site in the branch or on the campus from the one that is providing remote VPN connectivity, which is a different policy from something that is providing those SaaS application connectivity. And that becomes enormously complex. And because it's so disparate, it makes it very difficult to deliver zero trust. So we would suggest that going back to the consolidation piece, that this is only really possible if you're looking at a platform. And we're one of the businesses most able to provide that platform capability. So most of you who know Palo Alto will be familiar with user ID, app ID, and device ID. These are the three tenets of that we've always used within our next-gen firewall software, but these are very well suited for delivering zero trust because you're able to continuously monitor the user ID, the application ID and checking the device with the device ID and hip checks, for example. And that's all supported in our security stack. So there's a zero trust framework. This is a good way of building out the things that you need or the customer needs to provide it. And we break this down into three key elements, which is, for example, zero trust for users. And then you work through the different elements of those users. Who's their identity, device and workload, what are they going to get to? What type of access is it, and the transaction that's happening that they're going for. And that is also applies for applications. You can't assume an application is trustworthy. It needs to be inspected. You need to inspect the traffic that is going to it. And that, for example, is, you can't, zero trust means zero trust. You can't assume in trust at any point in this chain. And that includes your infrastructure, which brings us on to IoT and things like that, but that we're not covering in this session. We don't have time. But this covers all of those elements. So if you look at this from a Palo Alto perspective, we have the ability to cover lots of it. What we're not is an identity provider. We're not an IDP or an IAM solution. We work with your customers' existing IAM, be that Microsoft AD or Okta, for example. But we are able to provide security to many of those different elements. And this is part of our platform. So all these parts work together, allowing you to start moving towards a zero trust environment. So we've started the conversation around zero trust and identified the fact that it is a strategy, but there are lots of other key buzzwords knocking around our industry at the moment. And it's, I thought I'd take a moment to work through how those fit together and how they should be seen. So as mentioned, zero trust is a really big picture. And I'd advise any individual who's discussing with customers not to confuse these elements. You don't want to find yourself in a conversation around zero trust at a big picture when someone's looking at the NIST framework, for example, and you're going to get yourself in a sticky situation by talking about things that are beyond what it is that you really wanted to talk to the customer about. So the next part that is playing a big role in the industry at the moment, and is very hyped and well talked about, is SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge. I'll come on to in a little bit more about some detail around SASE and how that breaks down. But SASE was coined by Gartner in 2019, and it's the convergence of many of the unique security functions and network functions that blended together provides connectivity, as described earlier, from all of those user locations to all of the applications wherever they are. Now, SSE is the cloud delivered security part of SASE. So SASE is made up of SSE and SD-WAN primarily, which is SD-WAN being the network layer of SASE, and SSE being the secure service edge, which is the cloud delivered security layer of SASE. And one of the key tenets of SSE is zero trust network access, which is providing your user access to an application that is not SaaS or internet. And so if you build out these blobs all come together to help support your businesses or your customers' businesses travel towards a zero trust environment. So going back to what SASE is, which is a specialist area of mine, and for those of you who know Palo Alto well, this is supported with Prisma Access and Prisma SD-WAN, providing those services. So SASE is, make sure that every user, wherever they are, can get connectivity to all the applications that they're looking for. And it's a conglomeration of services and security functions that provide that connectivity in a secure way. So Prisma SASE here we're talking about is, we would say, the industry's most complete SASE solutions. One of the reasons is that whilst a lot of vendors out there claim to be SASE, is that they may have only the SSE element, which is the cloud delivered security, or they may be primarily an SD-WAN provider, or they partner with an SD-WAN provider, but that is a disparate SASE. And one of the more amusing things you hear out there at the moment is best of breed SASE, where if you read the original Gartner coinage of this and actually investigate what SASE is, the whole point of it is to move away from best of breed and to get a single platform with a single management plane for providing contiguous policy across all of the environments. So we've actually added a third layer to SASE that is becoming more prominent in more of the recent Gartner releases, which is the autonomous digital experience management. Because it's all well and good providing all of these services, but if you do, you need to make sure that the end user experience is good. If your end user experience isn't good, you start having issues with things like users finding alternatives, turning off security functions if they're allowed to try and improve user experience. And the journey to zero trust as described so far only works if it engages users. It only works if the users have a good positive experience and are able to get on with what it is that they're doing, utilizing these security functions. So being able to monitor that is key, and I'll come on to that in a bit more. And then you've got Prisma Access, that is the security as a service layer, which provides firewall as a service and CASB, or next-gen CASB as we're deploying these days, zero trust network access, cloud secure web gateway, which provides access directly into SaaS applications and the internet. Then you have Prisma SD-WAN, which is a layer 7 application focused SD-WAN capability that is that you would require for, or is a mechanism for connecting branches into your SASE environment. And that provides network and application layer visibility for troubleshooting and managing internet connectivity, or DIA and WAN connectivity. When speaking with customers and prospects, there will often be specific use cases that are your entry point into that customer. And I think this is a very important part of the discussion, to make sure that you're able to engage with those customers and not miss things, because you've got to understand that whilst the board and high level people might be on a zero trust journey, a lot of the guys we speak to again are focused on a project, and one of those projects could be an insertion point into that business to start talking bigger picture. So if you look at the different functions in the SASE environment that helps deliver zero trust, you get a number of different use cases. So we'll just run through some of these. So you've got secure internet access, which is SWIG, or secure web gateway. And there's a lot of blue coat proxies still out there, for example. That might be a project that a customer's looking at. They might need to be replacing their blue coat proxy with a cloud delivered service, and you need to provide a solution to support that. So that is a good insertion point for starting to discuss it. I've just got a question come up here from Eve. SD-WAN is not managed, Prisma SD-WAN is not managed with Panorama, it's cloud managed. We can reach out and we can provide a bit more detail with that if you like. Then the next element is SaaS access security. So this is getting to your business's primary SaaS applications. This is a really interesting topic and a big one that's growing in quite a serious way. So there are a number of elements of SaaS security that we provide within the Prisma Access moniker, which is you've got old school CASB, or Cloud Access Security Broker, which is API integrations with applications. So take Salesforce, for example, we integrate with Salesforce so we can scan and provide security for what's considered data at rest. And that's not just the SaaS side, but that would also be DLP, or data loss prevention. So you can inspect that from the data at rest perspective. Then there's data in flight, or as the data is passing through the solution from your SaaS application to a user, we can inspect that for over 44,000 applications can be inspected in flight. And we can also provide inline DLP, which means you don't then have to have an agent-based DLP solution here or a different one up here. You provide inline DLP function and data at rest DLP function. And one of the great benefits of that is the ability to deliver with or to deal with shadow IT. So we mentioned earlier that if you don't give a good end user experience, your users might go off to shadow IT, and shadow IT is a big issue that a lot of businesses are not looking at. But if you can see which applications a user is going to, you can categorize those, tolerated, you can categorize these applications and then provide security policy based on the categorization and block if necessary. And that can be fully granular down to your user has a customer who uses Dropbox. You can download from Dropbox, but not upload to Dropbox, for example, which provides that type of SaaS security. Then there's secure remote access, which is basically VPN replacement, but a little bit more advanced that and delivered from the cloud. So you get the cloud scale function there. Digital experience monitoring we've mentioned, and then there's the SD-WAN element. So ZTNA in a bit more detail. We say we have zero trust with no exceptions. That's because every single packet that is going from your user, regardless of where they are, is going through our full security stack all of the time. And that elevates us above a lot of the existing broker-based and proxy-based solutions, because we're not just looking at HTTP, HTTPS traffic. We're not doing the allow and ignore, for example. We are inspecting all traffic all of the time. So you've got user ID, app ID, and device ID I've mentioned, and then the continuous security inspection of that with all of the advanced Palo Alto security stack that you would be familiar with, you know, from advanced threat protection, the SaaS security I've talked about, advanced DNS, wildfire, DLP, advanced URL filtering. And this is protecting all data regardless, because it's a full layer 7 all protocol stack that we're able to provide. And this is provided to any user wherever they are. So just looking at the differences between the historic zero trust network access, we've labeled them 1.0 and 2.0. That's more of a marketing thing, but what it is to focus the mind on the differences between what you used to be able to do and how that violates the principle of least privilege. So if you allow a user connectivity into an environment and you don't monitor or check that, if they go off and do something that they weren't originally applied to do, that is not zero trust, because you're not doing least privilege access. Allow and ignore I've already mentioned. There's no security inspection once you've done that, once you've provided connectivity to that network segment or application. It doesn't protect all data because you're limited to the number of users that you protocols that you can inspect, and you can't secure all apps because of it. And I think one of the key things around allow and ignore is 100% of breaches over the last 10 to 15 years have been a result of allowed activity. You know, and many modern threats also ensure that they only piggyback on allowed activity, so they don't trigger the old school alarms. What we do with ZTNA 2.0 is to least privilege access, only give access to the environment, the specific part of the application that the user is allowed to. We can then provide step-up security. So if they need to go into an elevated state within an application, there is a secondary security check. I do that within SFDC myself on a regular basis. Continuous trust and continuous security inspection, because of the monitoring we're providing all of the time. We protect all data and all applications. Lastly, coming back to the ADEM piece, which is the digital experience monitoring, you've got to know what's going on in the network. You can't have a user who is at home having poor user experience. it doesn't work. They start doing other things, they get disengaged, and then they start trying to circumvent your zero trust environment, and that doesn't work for anybody long term. So our ADEM solution is able to provide metrics and monitoring and remediation to all of those elements. And when I say remediation, that's self-remediation from the user perspective. Give you a classic example. You've got your shouty lawyer, it's a high-powered lawyer is working at home, they've got poor application experience. ADEM will point out to them with a pop-up that their Wi-Fi signal is low. They might be working in the garden. Go back to their office, problem resolved. No ticket needs to be raised. Mean time to innocence is maintained, but good end user experience is maintained, and you have a happy user who's happy to work within your zero trust environment. So what you need is, as we talked about, you need unified management. So the policy is contiguous everywhere. You need to be able to provide that unified policy, and you need to unify the data flows throughout the environment to make sure that the user is getting access to what they need, only what they need, securely. So the key takeaways: zero trust is deep security everywhere for everything. Look at ZTNA 2.0, or the principles of that, and try and maintain them. I've not gone hugely into the architecture of Prisma Access. We didn't have time to do that, but we're built within the hyperscalers, and every customer gets a unique data plane, which is a huge benefit of us. There's no shared environment. User experience is key to success. Without good user experience, this gets political, and your customer doesn't adhere to the policies. And you need a unified product or platform to make sure that you're able to deliver everything within that environment and keep those contiguous policies. Thank you very much. I've tried to cram a lot into 30 minutes. Do reach out to us. As mentioned, make sure that Nikki has your name for your coffee voucher. If you've got any questions, we have a team here who can support it. We'd love to come with you to your customers and support you in your sales motions. Prisma Access has done very well in the recent Gartner MQ, and we are innovating at quite a rate to provide additional services to your customers.